Hey everybody, it's another edition of #Malkin Live. And this, of course, is the next in our series of America on Fire. I was pretty on fire and hot and bothered the first time I brought you a broadcast when the looting began last week, the looting and the arson and the anything but peaceful protest. As I tweeted earlier today, that phrase, peaceful protest, is a complete lie now. I'm not going to use it, and I don't think you should either. It is a completely artificial construct, and I'll talk more about that a little bit later. This isn't going to be a long broadcast. I'm tuned in to everything that's going on across the country and want to keep on top of all of the continuing violence, particularly the explicit war that is being waged on our law enforcement officers. Some of you might have seen that a friend of mine, Rob O'Donnell, obtained a law enforcement sensitive document that is warning officers in the Northeast that they are being doxxed and that their homes are being targeted, their families, their wives, and children being targeted as they are out working, trying to combat the riots in suburban and urban localities all across this country. And what's happening, of course, now in the New England and New York and Northeast corridor is going to spread across the country because coordinated doxing has been a hallmark of many of the types of protesters, rioters, looters, ne'er-do-wells, malefactors that are all blended in under the guise of securing so-called social justice, when the ultimate agenda is to sabotage law and order. That's it. There's no candy coating it. And I know I'm sick and tired of, and I hope you are too, so many of the apologists, not on the left, because that's what we expect of them, but on the so-called right, Republicans who cannot simply state the truth about the foundational lie that lit the riots in 1992 after the Rodney King incident, that inflamed the outrage and violence in 2014 after Ferguson, after Trayvon Martin, after Baltimore, and the same foundational lie that somehow we are such an inherently racist nation that cops across the country are out there lurking to murder and maim and hurt every Black person in America. It is a lie, and it needs to be rejected. It is not borne up by facts. It's not borne out by the reality of the good men and women who put uniforms in this country on every single day and every single night to secure the peace. I'm tired of it. And I wrote a column, which I am going to deliver to you as a message in this live stream. But I first want to play a couple of videos that helped fuel my fire to deliver my message to America to get up off its knees. I'm going to share a couple of these videos with you. And the first one you may have seen from a pastor and his flock in Texas.
We ask for forgiveness from our Black brothers and sisters for years and years of racism, of systematic racism.
She lifted me because I couldn't go to anybody else. I was very scared. I was afraid of what was going to be said about me, how people was going to look at me. My granny, my backbone, she made me feel.
This next one from CBS News, a nice compilation. And another one from Conway, I believe in Texas as well.
Y'all gonna take a leak? Y'all gonna take a leak with us? Will y'all take a leak?
Quit your job! Quit your job! Quit your job!
Y'all gonna take a leak?
Y'all gonna take a leak with us?
Will y'all take a leak?
Quit your job! Quit your job! Quit your job!
Y'all gonna take a leak?
Y'all gonna take a leak with us?
Will y'all take a leak?
How do y'all feel about that? Feel good? Feel like that's moral courage? Seeing that? Seeing law enforcement officers who are sworn to protect and serve groveling before agitators and saboteurs who hate them, who want them to quit their jobs, and more vehemently and on the extreme end, who want them to die. Who want them to die. What do you think ACAB means? What do you think FUCK 12 means? People forget history. I've spent the last almost 30 years documenting the far left's war on police. It's not just Antifa. It's not just Black Lives Matters. People who understand American history know it stretches all the way back to the Weather Underground, to the bombings and assassination campaigns waged both by elitist white liberals who hate America, as well as Black militants. The Black militants of the Black Liberation Army who targeted and assassinated cops from the West Coast to the East Coast. And this anti-cop animus, this anti-law and order animus that has metastasized through every civic and public and political institution in America since the 60s and 70s. That is what this is about. It's about exploiting crises and opportunities, warping the truth and reality about Black on white crime, and the truth and reality about who dies at the hands of the police, who dies at the hands of criminal elements. When I see people on their knees, I want to weep, I want to cry, and I want to scream. And the message of my column this week is to law-abiding Americans. To you, I say, you have done nothing wrong. Being white is not a crime. Being a Trump voter is not a crime. Being a police officer sworn to protect and serve every single day is not a crime. Nor is being a non-white police officer who is proud to uphold and enforce law and order a crime. Being a Black or yellow or red American who rejects excuse-making for criminals is not a crime. Rejecting collective guilt is not a crime. Refusing to acknowledge white privilege when you were born poor or from a broken home or with physical or psychological challenges is not a crime. Embracing the historic American nation, warts and all, flaws and all, instead of erasing it, is not a crime. Enforcing your private property rights is not a crime. Teaching your wife and your children to use a gun in self-defense is not a crime. Owning an AR-15 or 2 or 3 of them is not a crime. Do not let the media or Hollywood or academics or politicians gaslight you. Stop internalizing lies. Who are the criminals? Who are the heroes? Who are the makers and keepers of peace? Who are the sowers and reapers of hate? The Proud Boys, who guarded their communities and our country for the past 3 years, were lone citizen soldiers in the battle against Antifa that no one else on the ground wanted to fight. The group and its leader, Gavin McInnes, have suffered greatly for trying to stop the violence that is now raging across the country. McInnes has been deplatformed everywhere and falsely labeled a white supremacist. Scores of Proud Boys of all colors from all corners of the country have lost their jobs after being doxxed by Antifa vigilantes. 2 Proud Boys, 1 white, 1 black, are in prison now, railroaded by New York Democrats, the same ones that are letting their city burn to the ground. After a Kafkaesque trial in which the cop-hating Antifa victims who lured the Proud Boys into an October 28 street brawl refused to press charges or testify. What was the Proud Boys' crime? These unapologetic Americans stood on their feet, not on their knees. Journalists and photographers who documented Antifa anarchy for the past 3 years, such as Andy No and Shelley Bufarash and Brandon Brown in Portland, Oregon, have endured physical assaults and death threats and harassment. Many others have gone into hiding and suffer in silence. What was their crime? Exposing Antifa thuggery, standing eye to eye against their assailants, on their feet, not on their knees. Working class Irish and German and Polish American men of Fishtown, a northeast Philadelphia suburb, came together this week to prevent their neighborhood from being pillaged and burned like the rest of the city of brotherly riots. They banded together outside of the 26th police precinct, armed with bats and golf clubs, and they faced down Black Lives Matter protesters who were there to taunt and provoke the police. Turn off CNN and turn into the facts on the ground. At least 25 Philadelphia cops this week have been hurt during mob violence. It's an all-out war on the thin blue line. At least 150 cops have been assaulted, nearly 4 of them murdered in New York City as of Tuesday afternoon, and more will be harmed tonight. 2 Buffalo, New York LEOs were run over yesterday night. In addition, 51 members of the U.S. Park Police were injured. A Cincinnati police officer was grazed by a bullet that was aimed at his head. 4 St. Louis cops were shot. One of them, a retired police captain, was killed. A Las Vegas Metro cop was shot, and a federal officer was shot and killed in Oakland, all in the name of peace and tolerance and reparations. Yet against this bloody and retributive backdrop, Democrat leaders in Philadelphia who have condemned these peacekeeping Fishtown brigades as a mob of vigilantes at the same time have coddled violent looters. What was the crime of the Fishtown men? Standing tall on their feet, not on their knees. Scott Mendelson, the world record-holding powerlifter, protected his Southern California gym on Monday afternoon. He said, if you're going to destroy something that somebody worked so hard to build, well, you know what? Maybe you should be put down. He was talking about his gym, but he might as well have been talking about our country, a country we worked so hard to build. You walk through my door, he said, you threaten my life. I'm aiming for the head. What was Mendelssohn's crime? Standing, muscle-bound, and honor-bound. On his feet, not on his knees. Proud and good people hold their chins and their guns up. It is how Korean grocers responded when the police abandoned them during the 1992 LA riots. And it's how armed small business owners of all colors now are facing an onslaught of greedy, barbaric, and evil people hell-bent on destroying every enforcement bulwark that protects our civil society, from our borders to our neighborhoods to the White House. Weakness is not strength. Confessing sins for which you bear no guilt is not noble. It makes me sick to my stomach to see virtue-signaling police chiefs kneeling before barking rioters, calling them pigs. I'm nauseated by the sight of sobbing white people asking for forgiveness before sadistic Black Lives Matter demagogues, as if this will appease the unappeasable. It will not, and it never will. America, straighten up your spines, unbow your heads. No home or nation was ever saved by kowtowing to invaders or ransackers. Unless you're praying to God, get up off your knees. Good night.